Market Prospects, delivering timely information and education to prairie farmers for over 30 years. Market Prospects is brought to you by the University of Saskatchewan's Department of Agricultural and Resource Economics and these sponsors. Log on to marketprospects.usask.ca to view past programs and for information on upcoming programs.
Well, this week on Market Prospects, we look at the impact of Transportation Act amendments on prairie grain farmers. Joining us in studio is Tait, Director with the Saskatchewan Wheat Development Commission and farmer from Meota. Great to have you on Farmgate.
Thanks, Bob.
Right off the top then, the recently announced Bill C-49 would change the Canada Transportation Act. What do you think about this at this point, some of the amendments looked at?
It looks like these amendments will be, for the most part, pretty good for prairie farmers. We came together with our sister organization, Saskatchewan Barley, and with APAS, with whom we work with on several fronts. And together we formed a producer coalition, met with members of the government several times. We also put in several submissions, and it appears that they have listened to us on a great many of the topics that we put forward. It's also good to see that they've dropped some of the more controversial aspects of the Emerson report, such as reducing or eliminating the maximum revenue entitlement. And they've also included some other things to do with transparency, reporting shipping rates and volumes.
Yeah, and the maximum revenue entitlement, or MRE, on rail grain transportation will stay in place. But how is it calculated? And I understand that that is going to be changed as we go forward on this. And how is that going to impact prairie farmers?
Well, the retention of the MRE is probably the most important thing that we could have kept in this new law. It's the only protection farmers have against the near monopoly pricing power of the railways. It's calculated on what's got to be moved, how much we can pay for it, and there is a 20%, more or less, profit included in the calculations for the railways.
Do we see then that we're going to see a big change for farmers?
Hopefully it won't be a large change. There are some changes coming in. We noticed that container traffic and interswitching are left out of the MRE formula. Now, how that's going to work, we've got to see yet.
There will be changes to interswitching, though, I understand. And how important is that practice to shipping grain, and what will the amendments impact as far as moving grain then?
We're not just sure what's going to happen there. Interswitching itself was kind of counterintuitive. There are only two railways, and if they compete with each other, they're both going to make less money. But human nature being what it is, they like to kind of poach a little bit from each other, I think. And although interswitching is not used very much, when there is a potential for it, when it's still there, we see the freight rates drop in those particular areas.
So maybe you can explain to our audience how interswitching works then.
It's not like somebody else runs up your rail line and pulls your cars out. If you're close to an interswitch point where the railway's junction, close enough anyway, you have the opportunity to bid on the competitive rail's freight. If you win that bid, the other rail company will still pick the freight up from the elevator and take it to the switch point, whereon the winner of the bid will take it to port from there.
All right. Now, a railway costing review was not included in this. That's something that Producer Coalition wanted. Is Sask Wheat still pushing for that at this point? Or?
Absolutely. We really want to see a rail costing review done. We, with our coalition partners, got Travicon Research to look at some numbers. And when we look at the 13-14 crop year, we see that farmers paid $322 million over and above a standard rate of return, rate of profit guaranteed by the MRE. I know 322 is peanuts compared to what we lost because of excess basis, but still that's closer to a 60% profit for the railways rather than a 20% profit.
So what is it going to take, I guess, to get that implemented?
Who knows? We haven't had a costing review done since 1992. The whole Harper administration never looked at it. The Trudeau administration has talked about it, but so far nothing has happened.
All right. So what's needed from the federal government to help ship grain by rail as we move forward then?
Well, whatever's got to happen, I don't think it's going to happen really quickly because the federal government is going to rise in a couple of weeks for summer and not sit again until this fall. So Bill C-49 will not be implemented, made into a law, till at least late into the fall. In the meantime, the easiest and fastest thing to do is to extend the term of Bill C-30, the Fair Rail Freight for Farmers Act. As you might know, the fare rate wasn't always fair. It guaranteed a lot of grain moved in a certain amount of time. But because the railways were under this time constraint to move this amount of grain, they didn't always pull it fairly. If you're close to Calgary, if you're east of Winnipeg, or if you had a high throughput loop loading facility, you moved a lot of grain. A lot of Saskatchewan, the branch lines, the smaller facilities like where I am, we kind of got left out in the cold.
So the producer coalition will be, I guess, pushing forward on this if they can, I guess.
Yes, we're absolutely looking for fairness. We want everybody to have a chance to move their grain in a timely fashion. We want the capacity and fairness.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Tait. I'm sure all producers will be monitoring this very closely as we go forward. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay, we'll take a break again. We're back in 2 minutes. Please stay with us.